I want to go through history now. I want to look at the development of technology, the things that people wanted to do. Like, they wanted to be able to make books and read them. They wanted toilet paper. That's in here somewhere, right in the middle there. They wanted to be able to start fires easily without making your arms sore rubbing wood together. Okay, people who claim to be against technology, I don't even think they want to go back and start having to make fire to cook their food by rubbing a stick together, et cetera, et cetera. They've been trying to do this for a long time. And I wanted to start here. This is the year 100. You can start at 0 if you want, but my calendar program here didn't like 0, so I started at 100. We're going to go through the first 1,000 years and look some of the development we had. There was a man named Hero that lived in the ancient Roman world, and he made some amazing machines. Okay, in China, they developed a seismometer to measure earthquakes. The Dr. Galen, a physician, he developed clinical medicine in the year 200. They developed woodblock printing in China in the year 220. What happened? 100 years, 200 years, 300 years went by, and nothing more happened. They do, we look at petroleum as a modern thing. They knew about petroleum in China. They had petroleum wells where they took it out and used it to burn 240-meter petroleum wells in the year 347. They learned falling ball mechanics in 590. That's related to Galileo and Newton, but this is 1,000 years before those guys. They had windmills. They had banknotes. They learned about chemistry. They had made gunpowder in China. But this is several, let's say 10 or 12 inventions, significant inventions over 1,000 years. They didn't proceed. They didn't go any farther. Why not? What kind of culture did they have? Okay. Now, why am I showing you this? I'm showing you that not only for the show that a culture was missing, but I'm showing you that intelligence was not missing. People sometimes think, oh, we advanced in these modern ages in the recent 500 years because we're so smart. And these guys were less evolved or not quite as smart as us. Well, if they were not as smart, they wouldn't have been able to do these things. These things require intelligence to make the machines that her hero made, to make a mechanical clock in China. They were smart. Maybe smarter than we are. That wasn't enough. They didn't have the right culture. Let's look to the next 1,000 years. Start looking at the next 1,000 years. In the year 1000, they developed orthogonal coordinates, the things we call Cartesian coordinates, that were developed by René Descartes in France in the 1500s. And we think, those are developed. No, they had those 500 years before, but they didn't do anything with them. They developed steel. Henry Bessemer in England developed steel making in England in the, what was it, the 1800s, 1800s probably. Well, they did that in Asia in 1050. They made movable type book printing in 1088 in China. They knew about Newton's laws 500 years before Newton was born. They knew about blood circulation. They made eyeglasses. The Chinese took their gunpowder and made guns. But they didn't advance. They were smart. They had the advancement, and they just let it drop. What is wrong? I'm going to show you it's the culture. Okay? We come in here to the 1400s, and we first come out. Finally, Johannes Gutenberg made the movable type printing press in Germany and started putting out books like crazy. He made it to put out the Bible. That was his first book. We're going to look at that. That's very interesting. He started making a microscope, and all of a sudden, watch the progression here. From 1550 down to 1650. 100 years. How many inventions did they make in 100 years before that? One or two. Over a period of 1,000 years, somebody happened to come up with maybe 10 or 12 major, super good inventions, but they didn't do anything with them. They just dropped them. Now they're coming one after the other. Basic optics were redeveloped in the Netherlands. Chemistry textbook in France were the first start of chemistry thing. Then Robert Boyle advanced that even farther. Blaise Pascal, Galileo did their calculators, the barometers. Gravity law began to be developed before Newton, actually. They made a pendulum clock, a vacuum pump in 100 years. What do you got? About 12 inventions in 100 years. Okay? And it starts taking off. It's accelerating. Look at the countries: Germany, England, Denmark, England, Italy, Europe, England, Germany, England, France. All the same area. Is that because those people were more evolved or smarter? Absolutely not. Because they're doing things that other people in China and Korea had already done thousands of years before. 1,000 years or 500 years before this. Robert Boyle comes in. They made the first electric generator, 1660. Now comes Isaac Newton with calculus, the laws of motion defined, and the laws of universal gravitation, laws of optics, etc., etc. They made the first steam engine in 1698. First piano in Italy. They start making some progress in their musical instruments. Fahrenheit thermometer. First commercial steam engine. First appendectomy. They're starting to do surgery. Daniel Bernoulli published his theory on hydrodynamics in Switzerland. They developed the capacitor in Germany. And Leonhard Euler developed the wave theory of light. From 1650 to 1750 again. Roughly 14 major new inventions in another 100 years. So in 200 years, they already got about 30 new inventions that before it took 1,000 years to make. Now it's going to go faster. Conservation of energy derived from Newton's laws. Joseph Black started finding new chemistry. Carbon dioxide, discovering carbon dioxide. They made a better steam engine. They made an automobile in 1769. That didn't improve it very much. He started doing hot air balloon flight. Lagrange made equations of motion. They made a first modern chemistry textbook in France. They made the sewing machine and the cotton gin to save a lot of labor. Now we're dealing with just a period of about 50 years, less than 50 years, and we have another 15 major inventions. Now the line is almost vertical, you can see, because this represents only 10 years. And we already have another 13 inventions, or 14 inventions. Hydraulic press, printing, plywood, smallpox vaccine, voltaic cell, battery, first battery named after Volta, which we honor by y'all calling the measure of electrical strength volts. Electrolysis was discovered in Italy. They'd learned that water was made of hydrogen and oxygen. They explained how gases mixed by Dalton's law in England. Humphrey Davy invented the arc lamp, first electric light. Steam train, they started applying this in England. Japan came in here with it. They started using general anesthetic. So Japan is getting in on the action, but not very strongly. Just a couple things here and there. About the same pace as it was happening before in Asia. One every couple centuries. Now we're doing one every year. First steamboat was in England. The Dalton atomic theory of the atoms. First hydrogen-powered car. People think hydrogen power is a new idea. No, it was back from 1807. Again, this represents roughly 12 years. They made the stethoscope, the electric telegraph, the Stirling engine. They found learned about electricity and magnetism. Michael Faraday is coming in. He liquefies ammonia. Mr. Ampere comes in and develops the theory of electrodynamics. They discovered a thermoelectric effect. Charles Babbage makes the first mechanical computer. Didn't use it very much, but I don't think he used it at all, but he developed it, the concept. Make the first computer, 1822. And then the same year they developed photography. Then they developed thermodynamics, electromagnetism, the electromagnet to apply electromagnetism, friction match. Now you can light your fire just with scratching a match on a box. Ohm's law of electrical resistance. They're learning about electricity, and they made the first artificial compound of organic type in 1828 in Germany. And now look at how many England is showing up here. The reaping machine. Michael Faraday invented the method of electromagnetic induction that makes electric motors and generators. Electrochemical electroplating. Clapeyron's laws in chemistry. First refrigerator in 1834, I'm reading wrong. First electrical motor in Germany, 1834, the same year. So now you have an electrical motor that was developed on the basis of Faraday's principles. Now you can make an electric motor and put it on a refrigerator. You have a refrigerator. Made electric telegraph. Cathode rays discovered by Michael Faraday. First solar cell was made in 1839. Steam hammer, steam shovel. Joule Lenslaw, Mr. Joule coming in and developing thermodynamics. And they're making advances in medicine about finding leukemia's cause. Anesthetic using ether. Ideal gas law. Portland cement. Formal statement of conservation of energy. Nitroglycerin explosives. Measured the speed of light. First rifle. I don't know, some people don't want that one because that's a weapon of war, but they're starting to apply it in that way too. First airship. Laws of thermodynamics. First elevator with a safety brake on it. Reinforced concrete rediscovered from the ancient Roman writings. They started developing petroleum cracking. In 1855, Henry Bessemer rediscovered how to make steel. Now they're really going on fast. They first made their first practical refrigerator in 1856, and color photography is coming in. Kinetic theory of gas, cellular pathology, lead acid battery, carbon fibers, celluloid, pasteurization, Maxwell's equations, genetics study of Gregor Mendel's 1865. Here we're talking again another 13 years. One invention or two or three major inventions every year. First typewriter, first periodic table. They're starting to understand the elements. Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch established that diseases were caused by germs in 1870. They did not know that, but they knew that long ago, but they forgot because they didn't have the technology, the culture to maintain the technology. First generator, first telephone, Alexander Graham Bell, first four-stroke engine, first phonograph by Thomas Edison, first light bulb by Thomas Edison, 1 year after the other. Just 81, 82, 84, 84, 85, 85, 86, 86, bicycle, vaccine for cholera, first atomic machine gun, zinc carbon battery, which is the first dry cell battery we used to run our flashlights. They figured out how to make aluminum cheaply. They made the first gasoline car. They made the first radio. They made the first Bayer. This is one every year. And in 1887, they made 3 major advances in science in the same year. It was like in the newspaper, you would be reading about advances in science every year, which is astounding. Like it'd make you dizzy thinking about these things. And some of the things, you think, well, that's a little thing, the zipper. They invented the zipper. I think we all like the zipper, right? Instead of having to button your clothes up, you'd have a zipper. Okay, diesel engine, noble gases, radio communication. I don't want to dwell on all these. It's just fantastic. The speed of the production is going at a dizzying speed. We're coming to first diode, first nickel cadmium rechargeable battery, first gas turbine, first photoelectric cell invented by Albert Einstein. That's why he got his Nobel Prize, not because of theory of relativity. 1905, they learned how to make ammonia. They've discovered vitamins in 1906. Now they're starting to be able to deal with people's health in a different way. First commercial plastic, 1907. We hate that because it's polluting the oceans. But again, if you don't like it, that's not really success. But maybe it is success. Maybe we like it more than we think. First helicopter, 1907. I forgot the airplane. I mentioned the airplane. That's in here in my list, but I just went over it. That was the United States. And you start seeing the United States come into this, participating. Why? I'm telling you, it's because the culture was the right culture. Okay, they've learned about pH. They've made the first television transmission in 1909. Next year, they made the first laparoscopy operation in humans. The next year. They started discovering the specific vitamins like vitamin D. They discovered penicillin in 1928. England, United States, Canada, England. Okay, why was this all happening in England and Canada and the United States? Why so much? Why sometimes in France? Why in Europe? Why wasn't it happening in other parts of the world, in Africa and Asia? It's not because they were not smart. They are smart. People are smart in all parts of the world. Something was wrong with their belief system that gave their attitudes and work habits that did not produce these things. Something happened. First jet engine, 1930. Let's move on. We're just flying through these things. They slowed down a little while there. Now we're going faster and faster. Electron microscope, neutron, FM radio, yellow fever vaccine, nylon, petroleum refinery, nuclear fission. First programmable computer, 1938. Linus Pauling discovered the nature of the chemical bond in 1939. They made the heart defibrillator to save people from heart attacks in 1939. Does anybody want to quit that? No, I think even anti-technology people kind of are happy to have a heart defibrillator. Polyester was invented. The first rocket was invented in Germany. First dialysis machine. This is now in World War II. They're continuing. The atomic bomb. Is that an advance? Well, they're just huge amount. It's just going like, it's just dizzying progress. Transistor, holography, information theory, atomic clock, steel making of a different, a more efficient method. Structure of protein discovered by Linus Pauling. First thermonuclear weapon, heart machine. Structure of DNA determined in 1953. First videotape recorder made in Japan. Japan got another one in here. But the advances in the United States and England and Europe are going 1 or 2 or 3 per year. And there are more, of course. I'm giving the highlights. There were many, many more happening at the same time. Every year, new advances. This is nothing to compare with the advances made in the early part of the first millennium after Christ, where they did 10 every 1,000 years or 20 every 1,000 years. This is like 10 or 20 every year probably if we looked at all of them. First practical solar cell was developed in 1954. First polio vaccine. We're just going to go on and on. Intermodal container, disk drive, electroencephalograph, examination of the brain. First satellite. First PC. First pacemaker. First integrated circuit in 1958. First laser, 1960. First polio vaccine, for oral polio and vaccine in 1962. Artificial heart, liver transplant. First vaccine for measles. Computer mouse invented. There's Douglas Engelbart in 1964. Kevlar, pancreas transplant, heart transplant, controlled drug delivery. Pocket calculator invented in Japan. Computer tomography, CAT scan. Genetically modified organisms, microprocessor, email, insulin pump, laser surgery, capacitive touch screen, invented in 1973, and it's not a recent invention. First PET scanner, flash memory, invented in Japan in 1980. Artificial skin, heart, lung, human insulin made. CD-ROM, 1982. First cell phone, 1984. DNA, surgical robot, tissue engineering, laser cataract surgery, 1988. World Wide Web, Mosaic, DVDs, stem cell. What's happening here? Look at this. This covers a period of 26 years. And we only have 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. What? 9 inventions in 26 years. Something's happening. Well, I think it's because we lost our culture, or we're losing it. All these new things that came out in the 2000s were already invented in the 70s, the 60s, 50s. Okay, this brings up to 2016. I won't go any further, but there's really been no significant advances. Well, they're making electric cars. Yeah, they made electric cars in the 1800s. We're making them maybe better. Okay, let's go back here. I wanted to just have you see the phenomenal advance in technology of things that we all enjoy. Some we don't, but most of them will say, boy, I'm glad we have that now. And it just took off like crazy. It started out a little bit slow, maybe 10 every 50 years, and then pretty soon it was multiple every year. What happened? Okay, I already told you, it's the culture. The culture is developed in Germany. What was it? Okay, and I want to look at this. So I moved my timeline back to 15 to 1600s here, when it started, when it really accelerated. And I want to see what happened. What was the reason? It was not intelligence. Of course not. That's completely out of the question. So please get that out of your mind. The next thing people will say, when you want to advance technology, improve your education, make universities. I live in Bolivia, and that's there. Everybody says that. Make a university. We need to have more people with degrees. When did they start making universities in Europe? About 1200. When did the scientific revolution start? About 1600. 400 years later. That is not the reason. If you want to go back to history and say, well, let's make technology improvements by starting with getting more university education, well, that's what they did. And well, maybe they weren't teaching the right things, but education is not the solution, because it took 400 years after that. Something else happened. Some other people say, well, the Renaissance, Leonardo da Vinci. Yeah, Leonardo da Vinci came up with interesting ideas. Unfortunately, he didn't really make any of them. He just made drawings. And some of them, of course, like his helicopter, we know really wouldn't work. You have to have a different way of doing it. And the rest of the Renaissance, though, was basically studying the classics, studying the Greek classics, the statues, the artwork, Michelangelo and Raphael and those guys that have all their artwork over there in Italy now. That is not the basis for science. That's studying old classics. And remember, that was what was holding back the culture in China, for example. They were just focusing on old classics. They didn't try to do anything new. That's not the answer. And it happened in Italy, and the scientific revolution was in France and England and Germany, Netherlands, not in Italy. That wasn't it. Some people say, well, maybe it's because Christopher Columbus went to America and they started exploring, and Magellan sailed around the world and different things. Well, that happened about the same time, but maybe it was more of a product of something, of the common source of both the scientific revolution and the exploration that started both. But the exploration didn't really start science. Think about it. They came to America and discovered different peoples, some of them living in the jungle, some of them having basic empires where they still used llamas or horses, or so they discovered low-tech civilizations. That there had been high-tech civilizations in the past. This is an interesting study that we won't talk about now, but many, many years ago, there were all these stone buildings, pyramids and everything that were left. But the people living there at the time weren't using it. Now, what sense does that make when you discover lots of low-tech civilizations? Does that make you go back home and make high-tech progress? Not really. And the people who traveled didn't come back and do the science. Isaac Newton was not a world traveler. He just lived in England his whole life. So that doesn't relate. There was something else that happened. Protestant Reformation in Germany. That happened after the printing press. Johannes Gutenberg started printing Bibles. That was his goal. He was trying to print Bibles. He started that in 1439. And then people started having the books available. So the availability of books was important, but it took a while. What happened in the Protestant Reformation? They started reading the Bible. Martin Luther in Germany, the first thing he did was translate the Bible into German. The state church before that, the Roman Catholic Church, had not permitted that at that time. Now the Catholics encourage people to read the Bible, but at that time it was not permitted. This was when people started reading the Bible for the first time. In England, it took a few more years before they permitted them to read the Bible in England. The Church of England also did not allow people to read the Bible at first. The Edict of Nantes in France allowed freedom for the Protestants. Something happened, and since I suggested already, it was something in the culture that made the technological revolution happen. You might suspect that maybe something related to this Bible reading practice caused a culture shift. And now I'm going to show you some examples that will help you see what is the connection. What is the connection? That seems very strange to most people. They started reading the Bible and then they started science. Isn't the Bible against science, they say? There's something strange going on, and I want to show it to you. I want you to open your mind up because it does seem so strange. It's probably the reason why people don't talk about it. And since they don't talk about it, then people are left with a mystery. They just say all of a sudden people started doing science, and they had Isaac Newton, Blaise Pascal, and Robert Boyle, and Michael Faraday, and all these guys just showed up and all of a sudden started doing science. And they're going, well, why? And no one says anything. And so when they say, oh, maybe it's because they were reading the Bible. What? Well, maybe the reason that people say what is why they don't teach it. They don't want. So I'm being the brave guy that's actually saying this. Okay. So I want you to think about this. Now, there's something else happened, and you'll notice here that René Descartes, he was sort of part of the Enlightenment. Sort of like the beginning of the Enlightenment. It was 1637. And that's about the time the scientific revolution started. But the main Enlightenment came later. John Locke is another figure in there, but you talk about people like Voltaire, Hume, Diderot, Rousseau, the Enlightenment thinkers, thereafter. The scientific revolution started already. So the Enlightenment did not start the scientific revolution. Again, I think we're probably dealing with a common cause, or maybe the scientific revolution started the Enlightenment. They started the scientific revolution for cultural reasons. And then that opened the way for the Enlightenment thinkers, the free thinking movement, when they started the humanism movement and most of these people were kind of atheists. They certainly were not religious people. Voltaire was a strong atheist. Diderot was an atheist. Hume was an atheist, a materialist philosopher. Before that, probably Enlightenment kind of people, atheists, were kind of squelched, right? Because the church held strong control. You didn't dare say you were an atheist in public. Well, now there came a freedom here with the advance of science that allowed them to start coming out. Okay, so the Enlightenment did not start it. That was the other thing. So I wanted to eliminate these other suggestions. Had to have something to do with the Bible.